leader of the Deadlock Gang and bandit of my heart. She straight up shits out damage with her Wild West rifle and a whole bunch of TNT. What's up, guys? This is Colin with D-Pad Dubs. Today we're going to talk about Ashe. She is one of the best carry heroes in the game, and with this guide, you're going to learn how to do just that. Carry game after game after game. First, staying alive. Carrying can be kinda hard if you're dead all the time, so let's talk about what you can do to maximize your survivability while staying in the fight. Coach Gun is your most valuable escape ability because it allows vertical mobility, highly increasing Ashe's value by getting above the fight and creating distance. I see a lot of Ashes use their Coach Gun at their feet to get a quick view over the fight and go for a quick headshot. While there is some value in this, and admittedly it looks pretty badass, I would avoid doing this often because of how valuable Coach Gun is as a defensive ability. It needs to be available at all times for dire moments when it is the difference between life or death. Do not underestimate this ability. As a general rule, when getting into a position that can be accessed on foot, don't use Coach Gun as a way to get there faster. Take the extra time to walk around, to get up the stairs, etc. If you get caught by a flank with your Coach Gun on cooldown, your chances of survival go down dramatically. Take Reaper, for example. Most Reapers will use their Wraith to close distance between you and him, and once he's in close proximity, you're done for. But if you hit with Coach Gun once he's out of Wraith, you'll get him out of his optimal range and turn the fight to your advantage. When using Coach Gun to push back flankers, use the time they are floating in the air to line up a quick ADS before unloading and hip fire to finish them off. So one ADS shot, then unload and hip fire. And that brings me to my next point. Be conscious of how much ammo is in your clip, especially when you're separated from your team. Ashe's clip size is pretty generous, but her reload time is horrendous. I spend a fair amount of time firing from the hip when enemies are in close range, but this is only possible when you're topped up on bullets. I like to keep at least 4 to 6 shots in my clip, so I'm always ready for a duel. Second is all about positioning. DPS players that don't know how to position are DPS that suck. When considering positioning, there are generally 3 ways to approach each fight. You can play with your team core, play the high ground, or flank behind the enemy team. I'll get this out of the way quickly. Ashe is a terrible flanker, and she doesn't have the tool set for being behind enemy lines. She doesn't have enough mobility to quickly get back to her team or distance herself enough once she takes too much pressure. If you're stubborn and you want to flank anyways, then make sure to do so from a place that still allows for a good escape route. So your 2 best options are to play with the team core or on the high ground. Which play to play depends on the map and your team composition. When I'm playing defensively, I tend to stick with my team more. Maybe we've already capped the control point and they're trying to push and take it over, or maybe we're on Hanamura and we're just trying to hold. But this way I'm safer from potential threats that can get around our backline and help ensure my own survival. If we're on offense, however, then I'll look for a high ground that gives me a good angle past enemy shields. That makes it easy to pick off low health targets and force the enemy team into cover. Part of what makes Ashe such a great hero is her ability to get picks early in the team fight by picking an enemy off with a clean headshot after they've taken a bit of damage either from you or someone else on your team. If you are able to take out the enemy supports before anyone else is dead, you've all but secured the team fight win just with that one pick. For this reason, it's incredibly important not to get too focused on enemy tanks. Tanks are naturally much harder to take down, and you might find yourself getting tunneled on trying to secure a difficult kill when there's a much easier and more valuable target already in your field of view. I get it. Shooting the Roadhog is a lot more fun because you're probably going to hit every shot, and that feels real good. But you're going to provide much more value by focusing on characters that are easier for you to eliminate. Your target priority should be supports first, then DPS, then finally tanks. The only time you should veer from this is if you need to protect your team from a large threat, such as a flanking Reaper or Genji. During the match, think about where you can position yourself to take out enemy supports without putting yourself into a vulnerable position. Now we'll talk about when and how to use Dynamite. Your primary ability for charging ult is Dynamite. Make sure to land Dynamite on as many enemies as possible to build it up quickly. The best way to hit multiple opponents is to detonate it in midair before they have time to separate and avoid the blast. Dynamite is always thrown in a perfectly straight line, so it can be easily detonated from hipfire and doesn't take too much mechanical skill. Even if you're going for a long-range detonation, don't try to shoot it while aiming down sights. You're actually much more likely to miss. Get used to its arc and aim where it's going to be instead of following it with your sights until you catch up. Dynamite is especially useful against supports because the damage over time prevents the self-heals that most of them have. This works as a sort of anti and allows a good window for finishing off supports while they're burning. Now we'll talk a little bit about Bob. Bob is a unique ult because he acts as a 7th player that can capture and contest points, be healed, antied, etc. He charges slowly, and I see too many players waste him by not thinking about what impact he is actually going to have. For instance, if he is thrown at an enemy team before there is any other pressure from your team, he is easily countered and eliminated. But if he is thrown after the fight has already started, then he adds fuel to the already stoked fire of the team fight, leading to the enemy's impending doom. Also, consider how Bob should be positioned when the enemy team is running barriers. We want to place him where the enemy is punished if they try to defend from him, but also punished if they try to defend from the rest of your team. This is part of why it is so important to utilize Bob mid-fight instead of using him too early. He needs to be used only when your team is in position and ready to take advantage of a hulking aimbot behind enemy lines. As always, be sure to communicate with your team when you use your ult so you can take full advantage of this. Also, you want to throw Bob when you are near the enemy so they don't have time to avoid his charge and you can hit as many enemies as possible with his charge. Use the time they are knocked up to go for a sweet headshot and get a quick pick. He does a ton of damage, hit one extra shot, and you'll eliminate any 200 health squishy. So finally, we want to talk about training and mechanics. Admittedly, Ashe is not necessarily easy to play because of her high reliance on good mechanics. So let's talk about how you can maximize your aim and make your shots more reliable. Before you hop into a game of comp or even quick play, start a game against AI or a custom game where you can completely focus on your shots and build the habit of aiming for the head. Aiming for the head is crucial. Even if you miss more shots, you're still going to get more picks because of the burst damage provided by a headshot. And frankly, it's really not as hard as you think. Once you build the muscle memory of always aiming for the head and taking the time to practice it outside of a match, you might find yourself pleasantly surprised. Also, spend some dedicated time practicing her other abilities. Start a custom game with no cooldowns and practice shooting your dynamite at different ranges. Launch bots in the air with your coach gun and get used to the speed and distance they travel so you can perfect your follow-up shot. All the things that might be a little bit difficult in a game but you don't get to do too often, practice those things over and over again in a custom game so you feel very comfortable when it comes down to those moments in an actual match. In general, simply spending a bit of time outside of a match is more beneficial than most people realize, so do yourself a favor and hit the practice range. Well, that concludes the end of this guide on Ashe. Leave a comment below to let me know which tip helped you the most, or maybe a tip you have of your own that you'd like to share. Thank you so much for watching, and be sure to like and subscribe in return for my endless gratitude and more content like this released every week. As always, thanks for hanging out in the D-pad.
Bye.